breakfast show host Stephen Grootes. We thank you very much for your time this evening, Stephen. Well, is this a surprise? The two sides have been at each other's throats for months. It seems quite sudden now that they have all of a sudden reached this agreement.
Good day to you, Shante, and thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, no one expected this to happen quite so quickly. The two have been going at each other hammer and tongs. I mean, remember Patricia de Lille's tweet of her donning her boxing gloves and literally trying to deal the DA a knockout blow. That was all on Twitter. You got the sense she was gearing up for a fight, and the DA would bring appeal after appeal. They clearly wanted her out. So I think it was a surprise in terms of the speed of it. But if you look at that sort of analysis of both sides, I think it simply got to the point where both had nothing to gain from doing this. They both had nothing that they could really achieve. They needed to end it. And then I think there's a bigger question, a real question about the situation regarding Mmusi Maimane and his own personal leadership. I think that is one of the big issues as well. One of the big problems that they have is that he really has a lot at stake at the moment.
Yeah, how high were the stakes for both sides here, keeping in mind how this could possibly be affecting the DA votes?
So I think the DA's got major problems around all of this. It's been a big problem for them, and they really needed to try and solve some of the problems, and they needed to do them as quickly as they possibly could. And I think this goes some way to doing that. It really does mean that they're actually able to fix that problem quickly, and that they're actually able to do something about it. In a way, this has been one of the biggest problems they've had this year. They needed to get past it, and they needed to get past it as quickly as possible. Now that they've done that, it's going to look like a victory for Mmusi Maimane, and I think that's going to make him and the rest of the DA feel much better indeed.
Indeed, let's talk about that power struggle. What can we actually read into this agreement? What do you think it tells us about the relative power positions of both the DA and de Lille?
Well, I think it shows you that they both had a lot to lose. I think that's the real thing here. And when that happens, it's in the interest of both sides to actually do something to end this. I think that's what this really tells us, is that they both wanted to end it, and they wanted to end it quickly. I think they also had nothing to gain, and that's really important. At the same time, we don't yet know what Patricia de Lille, and there were issues around an SMS she allegedly sent, a message she'd sent to another councillor in the DA caucus that could have had implications for her. So she had a lot to lose, and the DA had further face to lose. This was becoming a bigger problem for them time and time again. And so I think it shows us that. It also means that in some ways they can both now declare they didn't lose, but I think neither of them can really declare that they won. And I think that could be quite important going forward.
How crucial is this for the DA? They've had a very, very difficult year with their internal battles spewing out all over into the public, and of course Patricia de Lille not making it easier. Does this solve some of their major problems?
It really does, yeah. It really does solve some of their major problems, and I think it allows them to now try and take the agenda forward. So what they're going to try and do, obviously, is they will be able to campaign as they want to campaign. They'll be able to remove this from being around their neck, and they'll feel free to try and take the battle back to the ANC again. I mean, bear in mind, their biggest campaign plank for many years, going back through the Helen Dealer era, etc., was all about competence and sort of management and proper administration. And the Patricia de Lille issue really exposed that was not the case. It really exposed problems with their competence. It really showed them up in a way. It allowed the ANC to take pot shots. I mean, you'll remember that bizarre moment when he had the ANC caucus in the Cape Town City Council actually voting to keep Patricia de Lille, while the DA caucus who had elected her were trying to remove her. So it removes all of that from them, and they can now try and go forward. And I think that's going to be very important. It allows, if you like, Mmusi Maimane to stand up reinvigorated in Parliament and try and attack President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Patricia de Lille is set to stay in office up until the 31st of October 2018. Now they have to elect a new mayor. Could we be expecting any major problems with the process?
So it's a lengthy process. I mean, until the end of October, an awful lot can go wrong. And I mean, I'm surprised by the time frame here. I'd be very interested to know why that time frame is in place. We might find out in the next few weeks. I think in terms of the caucus there will be a lot of attention in the DA and a lot of sort of arm twisting to make sure that whoever runs is unopposed. They will want this to end, and And they'll want to do that by making sure that the person who runs does not face any serious problems from within, that there's no competition, that they're actually able to make that election happen. They'll try, this will be a real test of the DA's discipline, particularly in the city of Cape Town. That doesn't mean that they'll emerge from it unscathed, but that's certainly what they'll try to do.
Yeah, well, the DA obviously has to fight now an election next year. Again, they have an uphill battle. Are there any issues on the horizon that could actually help sink them in any way?
So I think the one issue that might reinvigorate them is actually the land issue. Strange as it may sound, what the DA really needs is something to fight. It's used to having Jacob Zuma as the former president to fight, to oppose in parliament, etc. Now it might be able to turn the land issue to its advantage, and what it will try and do is gather up every single vote there is in trying to stop expropriation without compensation. They'll make arguments about the economy. They'll make arguments that appeal to minority voters who certainly came out to vote for them, but might have given up voting for them after the election of Cyril Ramaphosa at Nasrec. And so it'll turn their base back to them. It'll also give them a reason to basically argue. They'll argue that they're the party of current constitutions, and the party that will defend the constitution as it is now. And they will say that anything to change Clause 25 will really weaken the economy and result in poorer people being made more poor. That will be the phrase that's what they'll argue. What they'll hope to get is that people who benefit from the current status quo, including middle-class voters who maybe haven't voted for them before, they'll be hoping that they attract some of that vote, and so it could really reinvigorate the party in some ways.
Yeah, just speaking to the Deputy Chair of the Federal Executive in our last bulletin, of course, she mentioned saying that De Lille will still be allowed to participate in vote electioneering. What essentially does this say then? Is this a political manipulation?
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, I think what it does is it allows De Lille to say she's still a loyal member of the DA, and we've put our past behind us, and we've had mistakes and problems and disagreements, but now we're best of friends again. And I think that's a huge win for Mmusi Maimane if you can make that happen. I think that would mean then that basically they really are able to put this behind them. The problem, of course, is that every single move Patricia De Lille makes will be watched extremely closely. Is she really campaigning for the Democratic Alliance, or is she voting for someone else? Or is she sort of hinting at voting for someone else? I mean, we've seen other party leaders or former leaders of parties in KwaZulu-Natal recently hinting that people should vote for parties other than the one they come from. So Patricia De Lille will be watched as closely for those kinds of suggestions. And so it'll add a little bit of spice to the election campaign.
It definitely will. On that note, that's where we'll wrap things up this evening. Thank you very much for joining us, Stephen Grootes, via the phone line on the De Lille story, of course, political analyst and SAFM breakfast show, in conversation around some of the issues of the resignation of the now outgoing mayor of the city of Cape Town.